the first thing that it's going to begin to block is small vessels, i.e., at the area of the capillaries. And that means that it shuts off because if it's clumping, it's no longer moving through those capillary beds, meaning tissues are not getting their blood supply and the tissues are going to die. And that backs up into the larger vessels to the point that death ensues. That's what happens with our blood cells, the red blood cells. But the other part that comes with blood type, you may be blood typed as being negative or positive. Now, if I'm looking at that red blood cell, let's say I've been identified as A, all right? There's also something that exists called the RH group. Based upon the rhesus monkey that it was discovered, okay, once again, an antigen. Therefore, once again, on my plasma membrane, it will either have another marker or not. So there would be another marker present or not. You're either positive or negative. This is referred to as antigen D. Remember, the antigens are on the membrane of the cell. For this identifier, because it is important, okay? For this identifier, it's either there or not. Has nothing to do with the sugar chain for your blood type. Does everybody see how it's two different entities on the membrane of that red blood cell? So, people who are told that they are A positive, that means they have the D antigen on their red blood cell. If they don't have it, they're told they're negative. The antibodies against it are not normally in the blood, meaning creating an immune response against this antigen is not something the blood normally does. It will not develop the antibodies to it. Like, for example, if you are negative, but you're given positive blood, your body develops the antibodies. For the most part, that's okay. I mean, if in situations where if, like say for example, if I'm blood type A negative, but I'm in a car crash going home, which means I didn't anticipate it, okay? So that means I haven't baked any of my blood, all right? But I need a transfusion, and the only thing they might have back now, we're stretching it a little bit here, okay? And they give me somebody who's APOC. I'm okay. Go ahead, give it to me. The body will develop the antibody, but I don't plan on having any more children because that's usually when it comes into play. When it comes into being an issue is at the time of pregnancy. When a female gets pregnant, and don't forget, you've got an egg meeting a sperm. Mom is negative, but dad is positive. And that is the hereditary information that got passed. Mom is now being introduced to positive blood. First pregnancy, not a problem. All right? So, first pregnancy, usually everything is fine. In the course of the pregnancy, because you go through tons of tests now, okay? Even back when, like, I had my child, you had the test, nothing like you have now, but one of the things they do is they figured out your blood type, all right? And they determine they can determine as the pregnancy ensues if this situation is present. If mom is negative and the fetus is positive. And they have the means and the abilities to take care of this. Okay? So, as mom continues with the pregnancy, she begins to develop antibodies. First pregnancy, no problems, okay? But yes, you've got exchange of blood through that placenta. The mom's body has to supply the offspring, okay? Well, in the case of like a second pregnancy or third, that sort of thing, and I can't imagine it not getting identified in the first pregnancy, but if it didn't and she happens to get pregnant again, it's then that the problems arise. Because because once again, dad is if it's the same man, dad is now positive again. But what did mom do in her blood? She created the antibodies. Well, they now attack the developing fetus. The pregnancy can continue, and if not identified, the child is born with something called hemolytic disease of the newborn, HDN. Usually, a lot of times, it ends in death of the offspring because their red blood cells hemolyze. Lyse, burst. So their red blood cells burst. And that happens as the fetus is growing. Once the baby is born, they have the HDN, and it can lead to the death of the offspring. But like I said,
so red blood cells, they have like 120-day expiration date. Wouldn't do like antibodies and die off?
no.
So they stay in the mother's body until like.
And they would be in the offspring's blood, and they would always be there.
like they produce more antibodies when she gets pregnant the second time?
That's what happens. So see, the first time, nothing happens to the offspring. Offspring's fine. But it's during the second pregnancy, like I said, if it's with the same mate, okay, then once again, we've got mom still negative, well now she's positive, and therefore has the antibodies that attack the positive of the dad. So in the second pregnancy and any ones that come after that are the issues. But now what they do now is they have the RhoGAM shot. So in the first pregnancy, where it's identified, after the baby is born, mom is, or I think it's at a certain point, 28 weeks or something, given RhoGAM, and then given it again after the baby is born. Basically, it's an immune globulin. Remember, globulins travel in the bloodstream.
So that means that the woman's RS factor is changed after.
She would still be considered negative, but she has developed antibodies to the positive. So, this is an immune globulin, a protein that is introduced to the mother's bloodstream. And what it does in the fetus, now remember, mom is now pregnant for the second, third, whatever time. In the fetus, that will bind to the red blood cell rather than mom's antibodies. And therefore, the red blood cells don't burst and the baby should be born healthy.
Could this happen in twins? So
And-
like the first twin is born, but the second one is still negative like the dad.
No. If it's the first pregnancy, it should go along fine. Not saying it's not possible, because in the field of medicine, anything is possible. But chances of it would be minimal.
Because you know how some twins are like born on different days because it takes so long for the second one to come out.
Right, but that's an issue of just being in the oxytocin and everything to the uterus. Okay, so mom, like I said, first pregnancy, not negative, but baby's positive. She'll develop the antibody. Second and any other births will begin to attack the red blood cells. However, we have now corrected that problem with the RhoGAM. But this can happen, all right? The babies that are born, they usually identify it rather quickly. And I think the success rate has increased for babies that are born with HDN. However, it's extremely touch and go for quite a while. So that is the biggest issue with the blood typing, is at the time of pregnancy. Other times that positive and negative could possibly be an issue is, say for example, at the time of a organ transplant. It's one of the things now that they try to match up with organ transplants from the recipient and the person who is the donor. Now another, formed element in the blood was our leukocytes, the white blood cells. It's the least abundant formed element. I think we only produce, how many per day? 10 million per day. And when you centrifuge the tube of blood, that was the smallest part in the test tube, should have, and you know, this should be a normal count. Like if they were looking at, you know, the blood, there should be about 5,000 to 10,000 per microliter.